Traumatic Brain Injury by Matt Sanger. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on differentiating between the two main types of brain injuries, which is one, a severe brain injury, and two, a mild brain injury, more commonly known as a concussion. Traumatic brain injury is caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head from an external force that disrupts the normal functioning of the brain. A closed head injury is caused when the brain impacts the inside of the skull from a jostle, kind of bounces around on the inside. So this would be caused when a young athlete, maybe a football player, hits head to head. Versus a penetrating head injury is caused when an object enters the brain, so like a gunshot wound. Immediate injury can result in a bruised brain tissue, bleeding inside of the brain, lacerations in the brain, and nerve damage. Symptoms may not always be immediate. They can show up hours or even days later. Secondary effects can include swelling, fever, seizures, or an imbalance of neurological chemicals. And traumatic brain injuries can cause and increase the risk for things like epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other brain disorders. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on the most common form of mild traumatic brain injuries. Main types of brain injuries. Concussions result in a severe brain injury to a mild brain injury. If they aren't allowed to heal, they can be more susceptible. Traumatic brain injury is caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head. This is why there's external force that disrupts the normal functioning of the brain. Sports. A closed head injury is caused when the brain impacts the inside of the skull, so feeling slow, from a jostle, concentration, kind of bounces around on the inside. Memory is a huge factor when a young athlete, maybe a football player, hits head to head. There's lots of physical symptoms. A penetrating headache is caused when an object blurred vision, dizziness, nausea, wound. Immediate injury can result in a bruised brain tissue, lashing out, inside of the brain, lacerations, sad, anxiety, nervousness, and nerve damage. And any sort of may not always be immediate. Sleeping too much, hours or even days later. Especially secondary effects can include swelling, fever, seizures, or an imbalance of neurological chemicals. TBIs are involved in a third of all traumatic brain injuries. Can cause and increase the risk for extended period of epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other brain disorders. And they're more likely to occur if someone is already suffering. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on differentiating symptoms of a severe TBI main types of based on the severity of the injury. One, a severe brain injury, and two, a mild brain injury. How hard they were hit and what part of their brain was affected. Traumatic brain injury is caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head from an external force that disrupts the normal functioning of the brain. A closed head injury is caused when the brain impacts the inside of the skull that can occur from a jostle, a traumatic brain, kind of bounces around on the inside. So this would be caused when a young athlete, maybe a football player, hits head to head. All of these people versus a penetrating head injury is caused when an object enters the main cognitive areas, like a gunshot, we see are difficulties. Immediate injury can result in a bruised brain tissue, processing, and bleeding inside of the brain, lacerations in the brain, that we see are difficulties with balance. Symptoms may not always be immediate. They can show up hours paralysis, or even days later. Secondary effects can include swelling, fever, seizures, loss of the senses, or an imbalance of neurological chemicals, or ringing in the ears. Traumatic brain injuries can cause and increase the risk for things like epilepsy, lack of motivation, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, aggression. And you'll see an increase for this presentation. I'm going to focus on differentiating language between the two main types of brain injuries, loss of the ability to speak, a severe brain injury, and ability to a mild brain injury, loss of the ability to understand language, slurred speech. Traumatic brain injury is caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head from an external force that disrupts the normal functioning of the brain. Of 1996 a closed head injury is caused when the brain impacts the inside of the skull. Develop a recording system to conduct kind of bounces around on the inside. TBIs, so this would be caused when a young athlete, maybe a football player, hits head to head. To basically versus a penetrating head injury is caused when an object enters the brain. Has been updated like in 2000 and in 2000. Immediate injury can result in a bruised brain tissue, bleeding inside of the brain, every day 153 people in the US die from injuries that symptoms may not always be immediate. They can show up hours or even days later. TBIs. Secondary effects can include swelling, fever, seizures, and an imbalance of neurological chemicals. Falls are the leading cause of traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injuries can cause and increase the risk for things like epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other brain disorders. Getting struck by an object is the second leading cause. I'm going to focus on differentiating between the two main types of brain injuries, which is and the third one, severe brain injury to a mild brain injury. However,
commonly known as a
motor
concussion.
vehicle crashes are the leading
Traumatic
cause
brain
of
injury
hospitalization
is caused by a bump,
blow,
blow,
or jolt to the head from an external force that disrupts the normal functioning of the brain.
Because
Closed
the
head
symptoms
injury
of
is
a
caused when the
traumatic
brain
injury
impacts
vary
the
so
inside
much,
of the skull.
it's really important to
from a
understand
jostle,
each student as an
kind of
individual.
bounces around on the inside.
It's
So this
important
would
to
be
find out
caused
as
when
much
a
as
young
possible,
athlete,
and
maybe
then
a football
connect
player
to
hits
the
head-to-head
rehabilitation hospital
versus a
as well as
penetrating
the
head
special
injury is
education
caused
team
when an
in order
object
to put
enters
together
the
a
brain.
plan.
So like a gunshot wound.
As you're working with a student,
Immediate
it's important
injury
to
can
determine,
result
do they
in
need
a
to
bruised
relearn
brain
previously
tissue,
known material,
bleeding inside of the
or are
brain,
they
lacerations in the
able
brain,
to
and nerve damage.
recall that information.
Symptoms may not always be immediate. They can show up hours or even
for a lot of
days
these
later
students before they're even able
Secondary
to really enter
effects
a
can
classroom.
include swelling,
There's going to be
fever,
a combination of
seizures,
therapies
or
such
an
as,
imbalance of
speech
neurological
and
chemicals.
language, physical therapy,
and
occupational therapy.
Traumatic brain
cognitive
injuries can
rehabilitation therapy.
cause and increase the risk for things like epilepsy,
Considering that memory
Alzheimer's,
is one
Parkinson's,
of the
and
biggest
other brain
issues that
disorders.
someone with a traumatic brain injury
For this presentation,
struggles with,
I'm going to
it's important
focus
to
on
provide
differentiating
repetition
between the
and
two
consistency.
main types
Demonstrate
of
new
brain
tasks,
injuries, which
give
is
clear instructions,
one, a
and
severe
provide
brain injury,
examples
and two,
to
a mild
illustrate
brain
ideas
injury.
and concepts, more commonly known as a
Avoid
concussion.
figurative language.
Abstract
Traumatic brain
thought
injury
might be
is caused by a
challenging
bump,
this time.
blow, or jolt to the head from an
remove
external force
distractions from
that
environment,
disrupts the normal functioning
and provide
of the brain.
opportunities for the students
A closed
to
head
rest.
injury is
Getting
caused
back
when
into
the
the
brain
swing of
impacts
things
the
can be
inside
exhausting.
of the skull.
For
From a
students
jostle,
need
kind
this,
of bounces around
it's
on the
also
inside.
important to
So
use
this would be
assistive
caused
technology,
when a young
so
athlete,
calendar
maybe a
boards,
football player hits
schedule
head-to-head
organizers, medication
versus
reminders,
a penetrating
smart
head
devices,
injury
and all of
is
this
caused
things
when an
help with
object
memory
enters the brain.
and
So
focus.
like a gunshot wound. Immediate injury can
For
result
students
in
coming
a
out of
bruised
a
brain
more mild
tissue,
traumatic
bleeding
brain
inside of the
injury,
brain,
like a concussion,
lacerations in the
it's
brain,
important to
and
monitor
nerve
the student
damage.
until they no
Symptoms
longer
may not
display
always be
symptoms of
immediate.
concussion.
They can show up
Usually
hours or
takes
even
about
days
3 to
later.
4 weeks, but again, even
Secondary
that can
effects
really
can
vary
include
based on
swelling,
severity of the
fever,
hit.
seizures,
It's
or
a
an
good idea
imbalance
to
of
reduce
neurological
their assignment
chemicals.
load.
Increased
and
time allowed. Traumatic brain
complete
injuries
an
can
assignment,
cause and increase the
be
risk
okay
for
with them
things like
resting
epilepsy,
throughout the day,
Alzheimer's, Parkinson's,
and then also
and
give
other brain
instruction
disorders.
in multiple forms.
For this presentation, I'm going to
written
focus
and
on
verbal,
differentiating between the two
and especially if
main
it's something
types
that you
of
need them to
brain
do
injuries,
later,
which
like
is
homework.
one,
make
a
sure
severe
they have
brain
multiple
injury,
ways
and two,
to
a
recall
mild
that
brain
information,
injury.
more commonly known as a concussion. Project
Traumatic
Ideal
brain injury is caused by
a
a bump,
teacher
blow, or
preparation
jolt to the
program
head
that's
from an
intended
external
to
force
better prepare
that
teachers
disrupts
to work
the
with
normal
students with
functioning of
disabilities.
the brain.
This is a
A
great
closed
place
head
to
injury
start
is caused
for a
when the
teacher
brain
who has no
impacts the
experience in
inside
traumatic
of the
brain
skull,
injuries, but maybe
from a
has to get
jostle,
ready very quickly,
kind of
for a
bounces
student
around on the
who's
inside.
new
So
to
this
their
would be
class.
caused when a
The
young
next place that I'd
athlete,
suggest for
maybe a football
teachers
player,
is the
hits
Center for
head-to-head
Disease Control
versus
website.
a penetrating head
This
injury
website
is
has
caused
a
when an
lot of
object
information
enters the brain.
specifically
So,
with statistics and
gunshot wound.
prevalence. But they
Immediate
also
injury
have a
can
lot of
result
articles
in a
on
bruised brain
ways to
tissue,
recognize the
bleeding
symptoms
inside of the
and
brain,
signs
lacerations
of
in
someone
the
who
brain,
has
and
ATBI.
nerve damage. Symptoms may not always be immediate.
Brainline
They
was
can
a
show up
great
hours
resource
or even days
for me,
later.
and I think would be a great resource
Secondary
for
effects
parents
can
as
include
well.
swelling,
It covers
fever,
lots
seizures,
of different areas,
or an imbalance of
um,
neurological chemicals.
It talks a lot about caretaking
and traumatic brain
They
injuries
have great
can
information
cause
for
and increase
teachers
the risk
and
for
for parents,
things like
but I
epilepsy,
think this would be a great place
Alzheimer's,
for parents to
Parkinson's,
start.
and other brain disorders.
The next website that I suggested would
For
be
this
the Family
presentation,
Caregiver
I'm going to
Alliance,
focus
and
on
this is really for a
differentiating
parent
between
who
the two
is looking
main
for help,
types
needs
of
support,
brain
and needs
injuries, which is
training.
one,
and
a severe
becoming
brain
a
injury,
caregiver
to a
for
mild
their
brain
child.
injury.
More commonly known as a concussion.
Traumatic brain injury
This is
is
a list
caused
of
by a
resources
bump,
that I
blow,
used
or
for
jolt to the head
this
from an external
presentation.
force
There was
that
a lot of great
disrupts the normal
information in
functioning
there.
of the brain.
Hopefully you
Closed
enjoyed
head
this
injury is
presentation.
caused when the brain
and
impacts the
I
inside of the skull
Look forward to your feedback.
from a jostle, kind of bounces around